Okay, so automation and going paperless, it's everywhere you turn these days, right?
It really is.
And this article we're diving into today, it doesn't just scratch the surface.
It really doesn't.
It digs into why companies hit a wall making it work, even when they know it's good for them.
Yeah, it's like, well, it's that classic thing, right? Easier said than done.
Will they?
This article, what it does well is it goes into that human factor, the thing people don't always think about right away.
It's so easy to get caught up in the tech itself
Right.
that we forget there are actual humans who have to use it every single day. And that's usually where the wheels come off. Kind of like, remember that time we tried to get that project management software up and running?
Oh, yeah.
What a disaster.
Exhibit A, right there.
Yeah.
This article, it talks about that cultural resistance thing. People just don't like change, especially at work.
And who can blame them, honestly, especially if you've ever been through a bad system rollout?
Exactly. Exactly.
So how does the article suggest companies get around that? Like, how do you actually get people on board?
Well, it all starts with figuring out why there's pushback in the first place.
Right. Yeah.
Companies get really hung up on those upfront costs and also the fear of the unknown. Employees, they're worried about their jobs.
Right, which is understandable.
Managers, they don't see a quick return on that investment.
Of course.
But this article argues that's being short-sighted.
Okay, interesting.
It's not about cutting jobs. It's about shifting what those jobs look like.
So kind of evolving roles, not eliminating them completely?
Exactly. The article gave this great example. Company X, they're facing pushback on automation.
Right.
So they decided to retrain their data entry team. Instead of letting them go,
Interesting.
they became data analysts, using what they already knew in a new way.
Now that's thinking ahead. So instead of humans versus robots, it's more like humans with robots.
I like that. That's a good way to put it. The article really pushes this idea that technology should be helping us, not,
Taking over.
Yeah, exactly.
It's about using the best tool for the job, right? You wouldn't replace a chef with a robot just because you got a fancy new oven.
Exactly. It's about finding the right tool. And speaking of tools, the article goes into application lifecycle management systems.
Yeah.
ALM for short.
ALM. Okay, that sounds a little intimidating, I'm not going to lie.
Don't let the jargon throw you off. It's really just software that manages that whole development process from start to finish.
So everything's in one place.
Yeah. Tracking tasks, watching how things are progressing, keeping everyone in the loop.
Which is so important.
Which is crucial.
So kind of like that project management software we tried to use, but hopefully smoother sailing this time.
Hopefully much smoother. And that's actually where the article goes next. Implementation.
Yeah.
It's not enough to just throw software at a problem. You need training. And not just the technical stuff.
Right.
You've got to address how people are feeling about the change.
So it's almost like you're managing people as much as you're managing technology in a way.
You got it. You could have the most amazing ALM system in the world.
Right.
But if your team doesn't know how to use it or why they should use it,
Useless.
completely useless.
You know, it's funny you say that because the article actually gets into some of the big challenges around implementing ALM. And apparently one of the biggest mistakes is going overboard on customization right out of the gate.
Oh, absolutely. It's like, when you're trying a new recipe for the first time
Yeah.
and you start messing with all the ingredients before you've even, tasted the original,
Yeah.
you're going to ruin it.
Total recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
You got to start simple with this stuff. The article really stresses that.
So start with the basics, then tweak as you go.
Exactly. Start basic, get feedback as you go, and adjust from there.
So it's a process, not just a one-time thing.
100%. And it's got to be collaborative. The article actually says it's super important to loop your team in on every step.
Which makes sense. Who better to tell you what's working and what's not than the people actually using it, right? Right. From picking the right system to giving feedback once it's in place. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the people side of things.
Right.
But let's get a little more into the tech, yeah.
Okay.
The article, it specifically calls out software testing as a prime candidate for automation.
Makes sense.
But it's not as easy as just automating everything. There's still a need for human testers.
Yeah. Especially when it comes to the user experience, right? Making sure things are easy to use and all that. You can't really automate good design.
Exactly. Or catch those weird edge cases that pop up that a machine might miss. Humans are still way better at thinking outside the box.
Yeah.
Using their gut, applying a little common sense.
So it's about finding that balance again, right?
Yes. Where automation helps, not hurts.
Yeah.
The article talks about figuring out which tests are good for automating and which ones need a human eye.
Give me an example.
Okay, so Regression testing, basically making sure a code change didn't break something else that's perfect for automation.
Yeah.
It's repetitive, it takes forever. But then you've got exploratory testing. That's where you need humans to use their brains to really dig deep and find those hidden issues.
So instead of replacing human testers altogether, automation actually lets them focus on the more complex stuff that requires more like creative problem solving.
You got it. And honestly, this applies to way more than just software testing. Any company thinking about automation needs to really analyze what they're doing, figure out what can be automated, what can't, and how to make it all work together.
Work smarter, not harder.
Exactly. And make sure those human employees are still feeling challenged and engaged.
Right, which is key. Okay, so we've got ALM, we've got software testing. What else did this article highlight as having big potential for automation?
It went deep on the paperless office idea.
Which, yeah, that's a whole other beast.
It is. And obviously, helping the environment is huge.
Saving trees is always a good thing.
Always. But it goes beyond that.
Okay, how so?
Well, think about the cost savings. That's a big one for businesses.
Yeah, makes sense.
Less printing means you're not buying as many supplies. No more giant file rooms means lower overhead. It all adds up.
Time is money.
Exactly.
But I have to imagine there are some hurdles with going paperless, right? Like, it can't be as easy as just unplugging the printer and calling it a day.
You're right. It's definitely not as simple as flipping a switch.
Yeah.
The article went into a few of those challenges, like data security becomes even more important, and we're talking about sensitive stuff here.
Yeah, you don't want to be replacing file cabinets with data breaches.
Exactly. You need serious cybersecurity. The article also talked a lot about having a really good system for managing those digital documents. How are you storing them? Organizing them? How easy is it to find what you need?
Because you don't want to just be replacing physical clutter with digital clutter.
Right. Out of the frying pan, into the fire. And then there's that human element again.
Always.
Some people, they just love their paper.
It's true.
It's comforting. So you have to make that transition as easy as possible. Training, be upfront about concerns, it all matters.
There's that change management theme again. It's like no matter what part of automation you're at.
Human side is always going to be a factor.
Always.
Always. And speaking of the human impact, the article goes on to talk about, what does the future of work look like in a world that's increasingly automated?
Okay, now we're getting into some really interesting territory. So, are the robots taking over?
Well, it's not quite as dramatic as a robot takeover. But the article really wants us to think about what happens as machines start doing more of the things that, for a long time, we thought only humans could do. The creative stuff, the critical thinking, all of that.
So, not a robot takeover, but definitely something to think about.
Yeah. What happens is those lines get blurrier and blurrier, right?
Right. Like what we think only humans can do today
Right.
might not be the case tomorrow.
Exactly. And that's where this article gets really, really interesting. It kind of flips the script, you know.
Okay, how so?
Instead of being afraid of, like, some job apocalypse,
Right.
we should be thinking about how this frees us up.
Frees us up.
Yeah. Like, imagine, what if AI could take over a lot of that data analysis? The problem-solving stuff, even.
Okay.
Even some of the creative work, potentially.
Okay, I see where you're going with this. So it's not about being replaced. It's about, like, refocusing on what we're good at as humans.
Exactly. And the article, it specifically calls out those human skills that are going to be so valuable.
Like what? Give me an example.
Communication. Being able to adapt to new situations.
Yeah.
Emotional intelligence. That's a big one.
It's funny, right? It's like all those skills that maybe got like pushed aside a bit while everyone was focused on technical stuff
Right.
are now coming back in a big way.
Exactly. It's a whole new ballgame. And that's what I think is so fascinating about all of this.
Yeah.
It's not just about the tech itself. It's about adapting our mindset.
So how do we do that? I mean, in a practical sense, how do we get ready for jobs that might not even exist yet?
Well, the article says lifelong learning is going to be key. Always be learning. Always be willing to pick up new skills.
So you can't just rest on your laurels. You have to keep evolving.
It's not enough to be an expert in just one thing anymore. You got to be adaptable.
Yeah, it's that classic saying, right? The only constant is change.
Right. But now that change is happening faster than ever.
It's on overdrive.
And it's not just on individuals, right?
Yeah.
The article talks about how companies need to completely rethink how they approach training and development.
Make it a priority, not an afterthought.
Yeah. Invest in your people. Help them grow alongside the technology.
Because at the end of the day, you're only as good as your team.
100%. And a team that's like bought in and feels valued and feels empowered to embrace change.
That's a recipe for success.
That's how you thrive. no matter what the future holds.
This has been a real eye-opener, this article, I've got to say. It's definitely given me a lot to think about.
Me too. It's exciting, but it's also, it's a lot.
It is. And on that note, to everyone listening, we want to hear from you. What part of this whole automation thing has you the most curious? Or maybe a little worried?
Yeah, let's keep this conversation going.
Hit us up on social media. Tell us what you think. Until next time.